Today, January the 11th, our Take 5 with the Saints is a woman named Mary Slessor. Now, Mary Slessor might not be a household name. In fact, she's not any name in any of the Episcopal calendars of saints. Today is actually a vacant day in our calendar. And on these days that we encounter as we go through this during the year, I'll draw names from other Anglican resources of saints. Mary Slessor is recognized in the Church of England calendar, even though she wasn't an Episcopalian or an Anglican. She was a Scottish Presbyterian, but she is very worth remembering and holding as an example of faith on this day, especially for two reasons. One, as a person who overcame a great amount of obstacles early in her life, and two, as a woman who went into a man's world of missionary work and into a very hostile territory to do mission work and became one of the most highly respected missionaries of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, because she comes out of another resource, I don't have a scripture to go for today. So today we'll forego the scripture so I can say a few more things about her life. Mary Slessor was born in Aberdeen, Scotland in 1848, and she grew up in a very poor working class family. There was nothing that was gifted to her and her family growing up. In fact, from a very young age, she began working in factories and mills for the necessity of helping to put food on her family's table. As she grew up with her siblings and her mother and father, pneumonia wound up taking all of the men of her family, her two brothers and her father, so that it was her mother, and her sisters who had to fend for themselves in her teenage years. One of the few places where she found comfort and happiness early in life was the Scottish Presbyterian Church. And as she grew older, instead of looking to settle down in married life, she wanted to find a vocation to serve her church. While it's noted that she did write that she would have loved to have been ordained, women's ordination was not a thing in the 19th century, so she pursued another course, and that was to apply to the Missionary Society of the Scottish Presbyterian Church. And in 1876, at the age of 28, she set sail from Scotland to Nigeria, a place which had been heavily colonized and heavily blanketed by missionaries, but a place that had also traditionally been very hostile to missionaries, either those who had been kicked out or exiled from local Nigerian villages to, let's just say, they were either murdered or even sacrificed out of disdain and distrust for what they were doing. So here is Mary Slessor, 28-year-old woman of the late 19th century, which actually helped benefit her going to Nigeria, as because the fact that she was a woman, she was looked at instead of with disdain as more of a curiosity by many of the local tribes that she would go to visit. One of the things that got on the tribe's good side very quickly was that she very quickly picked up one of the local languages called Efik, as well as a few other local dialects, and once she did that, she began teaching. She also, in the midst of her teaching and learning the language, began studying the local customs and began learning how she could integrate herself into the life of the local tribes. She also, though, demonstrated a very strong and bold personality that while respecting customs which were not harmful, there were several superstitions in which she was well known to have stood up and resisted or done something to try to stop in some way. One of which was a custom that when twins were born in local Nigerian villages, they were often murdered or left in pots to die because it was believed that one of the children was born of the devil, and since they couldn't always figure out which child it was, both children were wind up being killed. Mary Slessor stood up to local leaders and got some to stop, and the ones she couldn't, she stole the children essentially in the middle of the night, saving them from their death, and wound up placing them with either other missionary families or with other local people in Nigeria who were not prone to such practices. She also was known for helping to stop, on occasion, practices of human sacrifice that were taking place. Particularly when a village elder died, it was thought that a sacrifice of another villager was needed to help facilitate that person's entry in safe passage into the next life. Mary Slessor, though, was also an advocate in standing up to missionaries who came in from England, Scotland, and other European countries who looked more to either dominate with their religion or exploit the locals in the name of religion. She became highly respected over the 40 years she served in Nigeria, finally giving up her ministry upon her death from malaria in 1915. Widely regarded and renowned by both Africans and by her native English and Scottish colleagues, she became the model for missionary work in Western Africa and in many ways opened the door for missionaries who otherwise might not have been well received had it not been for the grace, hospitality, and yet boldness to proclaim the gospel that Mary Slessor became known for. I invite you to read more about this fascinating, powerful, and very faithful woman, as she is a great example for those who come from humble backgrounds and who might have to struggle because of her gender in order to find a place for her to belong in the church and in society. She is indeed a saint for us to remember this day. That's all for today. Tune in tomorrow for January 12th for our next Saint of the Day. Take care and see you then.